Welcome to The Explainer. So picture this. It's mid-February 2026. America's supposed to be on a holiday weekend, but behind the scenes, two huge dramas are playing out. One is a security crisis that's paralyzing the government from the inside, and the other? It's a bold new plan to completely reshape the global order. Let's dig into how these two things are connected. So on the one hand, you've got President's Day. For a lot of the country, that means markets are closed, banks are shut, mail isn't running. But on the other hand, a really critical government department is in total turmoil. For more than 90% of the folks at Homeland Security, it's just another day on the job, except they're not getting paid.
So, how in the world did we get here? Well, this is the story of a partial government shutdown hitting the Department of Homeland Security, and it really lays bare the deep political battle lines that were drawn in Washington.
Now, this crisis didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was really the final act of a super tense political standoff. You see, they kicked the can down the road with a 2-week extension in early February, but that just delayed the inevitable. The negotiations went nowhere, the Senate shot down a long-term bill, and then, boom, midnight on February 13th, the clock just ran out.
When you boil it all down, the shutdown was about a fundamental clash over one single agency: Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. Democrats basically saw this funding deadline as their one big chance, their moment of maximum leverage to force some major changes in how ICE operates.
From the Republican side of the aisle, this was a really dangerous political game. You can hear it in this quote from House Appropriations Chairman Tom Cole. He said a shutdown isn't a strategy. It's a direct threat to our national security that puts all the pressure on the people on the front lines and the families they're sworn to protect.
But Democrats, they saw it as drawing a line in the sand. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made it crystal clear. He said his party was done funding what they saw as deeply problematic policies. For them, this was a stand they had to take to force a conversation about reform that they felt was long overdue. So what kind of changes were they actually after? Well, they were pushing for a lot more accountability and much stricter rules for agencies like ICE. We're talking about things like needing judicial warrants to go onto private property, banning agents from wearing masks, making sure they're clearly identified, and of course the big ones, stronger use of force rules and body cameras. And look, this wasn't just some abstract political fight in D.C. This shutdown had real, tangible consequences. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees, I'm talking about TSA screeners at the airport, Coast Guard members, even Secret Service agents, they were all forced to go to work without any idea when their next paycheck was coming. And that affects everything from our ability to respond to disasters to just getting through security at the airport. Okay, and here's where the story takes this really fascinating turn. Because while Washington was completely deadlocked over security here at home, the White House was rolling out this incredibly ambitious new plan for security all around the world. It was called the Board of Peace, and it was pitched as this major new U.S.-led initiative to solve global conflicts. And right out of the gate, it got a huge boost. A UN Security Council endorsement to manage the peace plan for Gaza. That gave it real international legal standing from day one. And this wasn't just talk. There was serious money behind it. President Trump announced that the board's members had already pledged $5 billion to get started with reconstruction and humanitarian aid in Gaza. That was a clear signal that this group had the resources to back up its mission. But as you can imagine, the board was met with a ton of skepticism right away. Yeah, it had the UN's blessing in about 25 countries signed on, but critics were already raising some pretty big red flags. They worried it was designed to undermine the United Nations, they pointed out that key allies like France were missing, and some even called it a pay-to-play club for nations that were friendly with the administration. Now, this whole shift in global strategy, it didn't just come out of nowhere. Around the exact same time, over at the Munich Security Conference, two very prominent American leaders laid out two fundamentally different visions for where the country should go on the world stage. And this slide, right here, this really gets to the heart of the whole debate in America at the time. On one side, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who saw the main threat as cultural, an existential threat from mass migration. On the other side, you had Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez arguing that the real danger was a new age of authoritarians, an age fueled by massive economic inequality. For Secretary Rubio, the argument was pretty clear. He believed that defending our national identity and our cultural cohesion, specifically against what he called mass migration, was absolutely central to the future of both the United States and Europe. But Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, well, she saw it completely differently. She shot back with a sharp rebuttal, arguing that this inward-looking, culture-first approach was actually a dangerous withdrawal from the world stage, one that only empowers authoritarian leaders like Vladimir Putin and makes the world a less stable place. So let's put all these pieces together. You've got a government shutdown at home that's all tangled up in a debate about borders and security. At the same time, a brand new global body is being launched to project American leadership. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of this fierce ideological fight over what that leadership should even look like. When you step back and look at it, it's pretty obvious these weren't just separate stories happening in mid-February 2026. No, they were all deeply connected. They were painting a picture of a nation that was really grappling with who it was at home and what its role in the world should be, all at the same time.
So where's all this leave us? Well, it's a snapshot of a nation at a genuine crossroads, and it forces us to ask a really critical question. When your government is this divided at home and the entire world order is being challenged from the outside, which of these competing visions of America is actually going to win out and define the future?